The subject for this evening is legal deposit, which I think most of us have got a glimmer of an understanding about, and the idea being that libraries will harvest regularly the internet so that historians in the future get a full picture of how we today were viewing current events. Andrew Yeates, who's the BPA's IP advisor, is going to talk us through what's happening with those discussions with government, whereas Trevor Fenwick, who most of you know as chairman of the DPA and co-founder of Euromonitor, is just going to give some ideas as a publisher about what it is about this legislation which gives him cause for concern.
The major breaches of copyright that we've experienced have all come as a result of people accessing our content in libraries. The issues for publishers are that they've always had to comply with the regulations, which was to supply one copy of anything published or distributed in the United Kingdom to the British Library, and then on request another 6 copies. Now, for most publishers, that's not a burden. As the model has changed to a digital world, libraries are missing out on a lot of content. But the costs of compliance with the proposed new regulations are, in my case, exactly the same on the downside. In other words, on the downstream side, the customer side, and that the data continues to be accessed and used, but there's a nuance there that by being digital, it's much easier to copy it, and libraries need greater safeguards for protecting digital content if it's available on a wide area network or a Wi-Fi system, and all of the issues there, and we need to make sure that those issues are headed off and we've got the protections we want. But there is now a cost of compliance on the upstream side, on the production side, in that if you produce a data set, you're going to have perhaps different software platforms, different data structures, and all of those, particularly in the case of dynamic databases which are password protected, are going to have to be resolved on a case-by-case issue with in negotiation with the libraries. What will happen is the library will contact you and say, "You lucky publisher, we would like your content to be deposited." And then a discussion will take place. And that discussion is going to cost us money as publishers and the library. And that is what this consultation really needs to flush out. The roles of libraries are changing. And whereas they perhaps used to be trusted, benevolent custodians of content, libraries are increasingly in a competitive world competing with search engines, and we need safeguards that they are going to continue to treat content with the respect and guard it the way that they always did in the analog, the print world, but which we know is very difficult in the digital environment.
Is the library going to be able to go simply onto my website and harvest the material and get a file in the format I want? Are there other software implications attached to any of those files which need to be considered? Is it going to be difficult for the library to get that entire package? How do I speak to the library about the problems when that arises? And crucially, absolutely crucially, once that stuff has been transferred to the library, what are the reassurances that the library can give you that if they then ingest that file into their own system, there is no corruption? There's always been a provision for regulations to be developed to cover electronic publications. A panel was appointed by the government to advise on this, and PPA was represented on that panel. And over the last few years, we've been trying to look at where the world of electronic publications is going in order to get a set of regulations through to enable the libraries to ingest and have these electronic publications legally deposited. They're looking at a single set of regulations to cover all these options. And that raises the questions among publishers about how are these different files going to be dealt with, what are their commercial priorities, and are the libraries really in a position to ingest them in a way that will recreate those publications in the right sort of way for the readers who really only need them for research purposes. So we need to be prepared to respond to this final consultation that's expected to come out in the next couple of months, and to ask questions of the libraries about what they're going to do with these things, how they're actually going to archive them effectively. And hopefully the discussion internally will enable people to ask these questions on the back of their own experience in building their own archive, so that we can challenge the libraries and make sure that they answer questions in a proper way, and we don't end up with a mishmash of regulations that actually puts cost burden burdens on publishers which are unfair and also potentially challenging to what they're trying to do online themselves.